I'm a clinical psychologist, author, international speaker, and consultant. I grew up in New Jersey, in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, graduated from Cherry Hill High School East, went to college in Rhode Island, and then spent about 10 years living in Berkeley, California, where I got my master's and my doctorate. And then we moved back here to the East Coast so that our children would know their grandparents. And now we live here. Hi, Colleen from Holyoke, also. Woo woo, our neighbor. And Mary from Belize. Oh my goodness. Um, all right, so let's get started. I'm happy to answer any questions about myself later, but we have so much to talk about today because social anxiety is enormous right now. Hi, Janice from New Zealand. Um, why is social anxiety so enormous? Because we've spent a period of time, 12 to 18 months or more, where there was a lot of confinement, where we were isolated from each other, particularly for children who lost at least a year of socializing and the social skills that go along with socializing. And so we want to talk a little bit about um, how social anxiety is not just related to the fear, but it's related to your thinking. Okay, so social anxiety is defined as a fear that people will scrutinize you in either in familiar or unfamiliar situations, usually unfamiliar situations, and that this negative judgment will have harmful effects on you. So these worries about humiliation and rejection are persistent, often lasting 6 months or more, and restrict your activities, interests, and relationships in order to receive a diagnosis of social anxiety disorder. When you worry so much about negative judgments from others, whether you're 10, 13, 35, or 50, you can't really be yourself. It's harder to make rewarding friendships or build a satisfying life. And social anxiety really blocks you every step of the way. Now, what are some sources of social anxiety? Well, a limited exposure to positive social experiences, genetics. Did you know that people with anxious parents are more likely to be anxious themselves? Um, a history, perhaps, of being bullied, memories of any kind of public humiliation, or just a general discomfort communicating with people. Other causes of social anxiety may come from feelings that you can't really relate to people. You just don't know how to do that. You're not good at it. Um, uh, or you haven't learned the proper social skills. Dating, bullying, peer pressure, these all contribute to social anxiety. So before I go on anymore, I'd love to hear from you if what you think um, are some of the sources of social anxiety for you or for your child. Somebody said that you were on for your middle schooler, so I'd love to start to answer some questions about the sources of social anxiety, and then we can start to unpack some strategies to deal with those specific sources. So Leslie says, I've always been quite good in the social realm and I'm quite extroverted. Yes. Oh, until COVID. There are many people with ADHD who are really social and they're very comfortable in the social environment. But then, when we deal with when we're dealing with COVID, a lot of our fears that we might have, really not paid much attention to have come up in very intense ways. Carolina, would refusing to ask for help fall under this? Absolutely. If you ask for help, then people know that you don't know what's going on. And so you're afraid of what they're going to think about you. You're worried about the judgment that they're going to have about you. So what's really interesting about social anxiety, it's the fear of what someone's going to say to you and the assumption that you know what bad thing they're going to say about you when actually you really don't. So it's a kind of twisted form of negative thinking. Jasmine says just an accumulation of experiences over time. So a lot of people with social anxiety have had a number of negative experiences that kind of have built up over time. Taylor says my in-laws, my partner's family. Jasmine, but I was shy from birth. Ed says, sometimes I feel like when I'm in a group that's talking, it's hard for me to get a word in because while they're talking, I'm trying to structure my words. Yes, and that happens to a lot of people with ADHD because you may have slower processing speed or your working memory might be weaker. So, you're still trying to take in this information and draw up something from your past experience that you would love to apply to this current conversation. But by the time you get your idea, people have moved on to something else. And there are so many comments here. I'm going to have a hard time keeping up with them. I'm going to do my best. Marcia, my son is 12. He grows his hair so he can hide behind his fringe. He likes to feel invisible. So sad. So a lot of middle schoolers, and that's in the United States, so those would be kids from 11 to 14. Often, this is the time when kids normally, naturally are uncomfortable with each other. That's part of what being a tween and an early teen is about. You're trying to figure out, who am I? Where do I belong? What do I believe? And if you feel like you're different in any way, that's generally not the kind a good thing. You have this thought, these ideas that there's this way to be in the world that everyone else is that you're not. And if you are neurodiverse, if you have ADHD, if you have a learning disability, if you are level 1 on the autism scale spectrum, if you have anxiety, you struggle, or you're twice exceptional, or you're depressed. If you have any of these things going on, what's going to happen is you are going to be much more self-critical, and some people will just pull back. They want to kind of be invisible. And that is a very sad and hard thing for parents to watch. And so what we want to do to counteract that desire to be invisible is to nurture an island of competence. So we know that for resiliency, to build resiliency, there are 3 components: islands of competency, charismatic adults, and growth mindsets. And so we want to start with that island of competency, which really is, what are you good at? What do you like to do? What lights you up? And to spend time doing that. And yes, a lot of people say, oh, it's just computers, it's just gaming. That might be where your son is able to interact with people. I've had clients where that was where they could actually socially interact comfortably for a year or so, and then they were able, as they matured, to interact face to face. So there are a few more questions. Carolina, I would love a strategy for my 10-year-old to ask for help in class. This is affecting his classwork. Right. So one of the challenges for him for asking for help is probably the belief that everyone now will see that he's quote unquote stupid or behind or some other negative adjective that he's attributed to asking for help. And when kids are afraid to ask for help, we want to assist them not only in understanding that everybody needs help sometimes, even the smart kids, quote unquote, and I'm saying quote unquote because having ADHD or any other kind of neurodiversity has nothing to do with intelligence. But it's this perception that somehow other kids don't need help, but I do. And so there's a lot of, with social anxiety, there's a lot of comparisons of my inside to other people's outside. And we don't actually, kids don't really think about, and adults, we don't think about what other people's insides are actually about. We make a whole lot of assumptions about them based on how they look and how they appear. And so what I think would be important is to have a meeting, Carolina, with your son and the teacher, and to come up with some kind of signal that he doesn't understand what's going on, that won't be drawing attention to him as much as raising his hand in class. Like, could it be pulling his ear? Could it be a colored Post-it on his desk? What are some other ways? Or could he just like gently raise his hand like this next to his side? You can't see that because the computer's not showing it, but you know what I mean. So that's what I would do. I would really sit down and try to figure out a signal system so that until he's more comfortable. Daniel, being autistic and not seeing what everyone else sees through body language. This will definitely contribute to social anxiety because you're missing this piece of interpreting um, facial expressions or body signs. And certainly there are there are plenty of videos on how to teach you how to do that. But in the moment, because you're already aware that this is a challenge for you, you're going to freeze up, and it's going to be harder to access what you know or what you've done before that's worked. And that's the thing that we want to talk about. Paula, I miss things because I process verbal things slowly. So I have a hard time sometimes keeping up with larger group banter. Paula, you are not alone. I hear this over and over again from kids and from adults. In fact, I worked with a 13-year-old once who who had auditory processing issues as well as a slower processing speed, like in the way that you do. And she came in tears and she says, everyone's always telling me, hurry up. And, why are you asking these questions? And I can't help it. I just don't hear what they say. And it takes me longer. And so we worked on a phrase that she could say. Was there a friend or two in her friend group who she felt really understood her, or who might also have a learning challenge? And to communicate that, actually, you guys, I hear what you have to say. It's just my brain works a little slower to deliver what I hear into the part of my brain that understands it. So sometimes I'm going to have to ask questions like, could you say that again? Or what? I missed it. And to have someone maybe that you can talk to privately next to you rather than in the large group. And this is where sometimes, particularly people with autism spectrum disorders, engage in masking or mimicry. They sort of go along with what they see happening around them until they can figure out how to participate and jump in. Janelle, excuse me, I'm a social butterfly and know no strangers. But when I have to enter spaces with lots of people who I know each other and I'm on the outside, I have severe social anxiety. Janelle, I think a lot of us feel uncomfortable when we enter a space where people know each other and we don't, or they know each other well, and we don't really know them. I mean, I know that I'm speaking at a panel at a conference next Friday, and I really don't know anybody. I've met them online. I'm a little bit anxious about going. Like, I'm just a little nervous. I haven't done it. And there's a difference between nervousness, which is feeling uncomfortable and uncertain because you haven't been in this situation before. And then once you have been in that situation a couple times, you understand that you've been in this situation, and so you kind of acclimate, so the nervousness goes down. And social anxiety, where you're in a panic because you can't draw up from your working memory or your memory times when you've been in similar situations and how you've coped. And so in those cases, you really have to plan for what your strategy is, not just to sort of enter the situation, but also an escape plan. How are you going to take some time if you're feeling overwhelmed or you're panicking a little bit or you're downing yourself? Where are you going to go? I am a big fan of the bathroom. Why? Because everybody goes to the bathroom, and you can go into the bathroom. If it's a stall, you can just sit there and do some breathing, or you can wash your hands, or maybe comb your hair, put your lips gloss on, and you can slow yourself down. And that's a very common, and if you need to say, normal way of being, and nobody will think less of you because you're doing that. Jasmine, I get interrupted and people don't realize it, and then I interrupt because the conversation is racing away and they get offended. Yeah, that sounds really hard. Marianne, confusion, cognitive limitations, in addition to ADHD with a severe language disorder, can make socializing a minefield for my son, who prefers structured interactions like through online gaming. That makes sense to me, Marianne, because he can control the amount of information that's coming into his field, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. And I mean, because sometimes this is very helpful, and who knows, maybe someday he'll be a creator of incredible games. What we want to do is balance that with perhaps some supervised one-on-one activities. So maybe you invite one of his friends over for pizza, and then you play a game together as a family, so he's not on the hot seat for entertaining that person. Let's see. I have no idea how to enter group conversations. Yes, so entering group conversations is a particular challenge, and it requires particular skills. When you enter a group conversation, essentially the first thing that you need to do is really be quiet, because we have to listen to what people are talking about and take our time moving from speaker to speaker, and reflecting on what they're saying. And one of the challenges with group conversations is people speak very quickly. So one person will go, and then another person will go, and then a third person will go, and you're like, wait, I want to say something. Now, in my particular Jewish culture, in my family, we're all very busy. We're all loud. We're very engaged conversations in my conversationalists in my family. I'm not disparaging Jewish culture at all. I'm just saying I'm actually proud of it. It's a wonderful thing I love about us. But my son's new wife is not from that culture, and when she first came to dinner at our house, she was like, wait, everyone is talking at the same time. I can't say anything. And we stopped and we were like, oh, she's right. We're all talking at the same time. And so, it was really, I'm sure we knew that about ourselves, but we wanted to be different to include her. And so, that was a really good coping strategy on her part, to be able to say, hey, I have something I want to say, but I can't get a word in. I can't seem to get my opinion in. And that's another thing, like to come up with a few phrases for yourself like that, like, hey, can I add something to the conversation? Or so that people know that you want to say something, and they pause to include you. Angela, bullied at school, worried what people think of me. Now I have these thoughts all my life, and I'm 45. Angela, I feel that. I was bullied at school myself, and it really kind of planted a seed of insecurity that people are thinking about me, they are thinking unkindly about me. And I think the thing that has really helped me with this, Angela, is actually taking people's actions more at their face value. If they don't think well about me, there's not really much I can do about that. I'm doing my best to do the next right thing every minute. So I try to do my best, and people will like it or they won't. And I think, in a way, part of what has helped me come to that place is to really kind of hug my 6-year-old Sharon, who was bullied very, very meanly at her new school, and to let her know, like, it's okay to be smart. It's okay to raise your hand. It's okay to be energetic and enthusiastic. And that the people who were, had trouble with that, it was much more about them than about me. And so if you can maybe do a meditation or sit or draw by yourself, and really think about, close your eyes, what would you want to say to your younger Angela, and to comfort her, and to let her know that she's just great, just the way she is. Hi, Shelley. Yes, I can agree with that. I was bullied at school and struggled to ask for help at work and with my partner. It's really hard, if you've been bullied, to overcome your fear that if you say or do something wrong again, you will be bullied once more. And I think the important thing is to remember that being bullied as a child is different than being bullied as an adult. And if it's okay, I'd like to share a story where I was bullied, because people bully in all kinds of ways, and exclusion is a very popular one. And I was in my 40s, and my son played on this travel soccer team, and most of the kids were from towns that were about 45 minutes from where I live. And in addition, I was a professional. I have my doctorate in psychology, and there was this group of moms, a large group of moms, who had known each other for a couple of years. And we were at one of these away games for the weekend. And after the game was over, I went up to the moms, who were in a circle, And I said, hey, what are you doing after the game? Could we join you? And one of the moms said, well, we don't know yet. And then she turned her back and went back to the group. And I was standing out there and, thinking, whoa, this is really uncomfortable. And then I tapped her on the shoulder. I'm like, well, have you decided? Can we join you? And she's like, we all don't have to do the same thing. And I was like, oh my God, I am 45 and or whatever I was, and I am dealing with middle school behavior in adults. No. And I took myself over to another mom who was sitting with her kids who, was clearly not part of that group. And I went over to her, and this was the adult South. And I said, hey, what are you doing? You want to do something with the boys, get some food and maybe go to the beach? And she was like, that would be great. And so we went off and did that. And then what happened, which was what happens a lot in these situations, is that the group saw that there were some other people who were socializing and making friends, and they were a little threatened by that. And then they basically opened to include us. Not that I cared by that point anyway, because I kind of written them off. So, I think I'm so interested in social anxiety and talking about it because I've experienced it, and it stinks. But I think it's really important to differentiate between your child self and your adult self. And sometimes our child selves are wounded and they're directing our adult selves. We're still acting out of those wounds. And that's the part that needs the healing. Augustine, my 15-year-old has poly short hair. Okay, he's self-aware of his awkwardness and jokes about it, but he still avoids certain social situations, especially in new environments. Yeah, and some people are slow to warm. Some people are slow to warm. At least he is accepting it. Okay. Lynn, I miss social cues, jump into conversations late, and go off on tangents after other people have moved on to other topics. Lynn, I don't think you're alone with that. I think that one of the things that have to watch with people who have ADHD are the tangents. That something's interesting to you, like there's one topic, and then it reminds you of something else, and you go off into that topic, and people want to move on to something else. And so that really requires us watching their faces. Because people give cues when they're bored or they're ready to stop or they've disengaged. And our job is to say, would you like to hear more about this, or do you want to shift the topic? Jenna, my Tourette's made me a target for bullies as a child. I'm sorry. And now, even though I have it mostly under control, it's a hassle to explain, so I just avoid making friends. Oh, Jenna, you're depriving the world of your wonderfulness. I'm sure there are a few people who would love to be your friend, probably people in this community right now. And I think adults who have challenges, whether it's ADHD or a learning disability or twice exceptional, will be much more understanding than kids are. Kids can be very cruel. Augustine, yes, islands of competency, charismatic adults, and a growth mindset. Peter, I'm absolutely a talker, but I feel like when I speak, more often than not, I'm not being heard. Almost as if I'm just different or not following cues from others. How can you tell that you're not being heard? Peter, and also when you speak, are you speaking to a topic that other people have spoken about, like to what's relevant right at hand, or are you speaking to something that's past? Elena, my 10-year-old can look very rude when she's in certain situations. I think it's because of her anxiety. I'm worried she won't have friends because of this. What can we do about this? So some people have a face or an expression on their face that may read as hostile or kind of negative, even though that's not how they feel. And so you might want to do something as simple as like looking at a mirror together and making different faces, and seeing, how do you want to, what face do you want to have on? when you're in a situation. Because my guess is she's not rude, she's perplexed or uncertain or confused, but it's coming off as rude. And that's sometimes why we see people who are shy interpreted as being sort of snobby and um, judgmental. Janelle, every time I'm in that situation, I do great once I'm there, yet my anxiety hits so hard that I shut down and don't enter those spaces. Right. And so, what we want to do when you have that kind of profound anxiety is make very small steps. So, maybe you go close to the situation and that's it for that day. Maybe then you go into the situation and that's it for that day. You give yourself small goals, and once you've met that goal, like, or it could be, I'm going to be here for 5 minutes and then you can leave. But you set small goals for yourself so that you can actually feel like you're achieving them and making progress. Way to go, Leslie. Let's see. Marcia, if I'm in a group, I tend to say something outrageous and I can't stop it. It becomes awkward. Is there a way that you can say, whoa, that was a little out of left field, sorry, everybody, and laugh about it rather than like pulling in and hating yourself for it? Because the more that you can address some of your quirks with humor and acknowledgement, the better I think it is in social situations. Carolina, daily affirmations help, especially on rough mornings. You bet they do. Gail, I'm still being bullied at 50 as an adult after getting my ADHD diagnosis at 36 after my daughter got diagnosis. That is terrible and very rude. I agree, Carolina. I have a very hard time making and keeping friends. I think that a lot of people struggle with making and keeping friends because having friends takes work. You know, um, I have friends, and I am the person who reaches out. Like, I wish more people reached out to me. And I know they love and adore me, but, they don't. They expect that I'm going to reach out to them. And because I've asked them, I said, how come, you don't reach out? And they're like, because you always reach out. Why should I reach out? And I was like, well, yeah, but I would really like it if you would reach out. And they're like, oh, okay. And then they just like, maybe they make an effort or they don't. So I think one of the things about making friends is pacing, getting to know someone little by little, and also having one or two people that you're doing that with, because you can have one person and then maybe overwhelm them. So you want to have a few people and do small things for shorter amounts of time. Maribel, it was so interesting what you said about the group of parents that behave as teenagers. I'm from Mexico, so I just couldn't understand the behavior. I wonder how I can help my kids when they're in that situation. Mm-hmm. Right. And so for me, that's what I think is that when you're in a situation when kids are doing that to you, not everyone is part of a group. There are other people who are outliers, and frankly, we're terrific. And so I think that if your child is not part of the group, we want to help your child. And we want to help your child foster and facilitate friendships with other kids who may not be part of the popular group. Augustine, something that helped me is to realize that in general, people do not want to return to a topic once it has changed. That's a very, very, very good point. I have learned to let those thoughts go and catch up. It's okay if I don't have something to add in a timely manner. That's right. And so generally in conversation, when a topic has moved on and they're two topics away, going back to respond to that topic in some cases can work, but most often for teenagers and younger children, it doesn't. You have to be more current with what's happening. Monica, I can never seem to connect with people. It feels like I'm on a different wavelength than everyone. Even if I do make friends, it seems like that I'm always the one reaching out. At this point, I just want to learn and make friends with myself. So making friends with yourself makes a lot of sense, and I think it's really important. And I think that one thing you might want to think about is what are your expectations for connecting, and how are you doing it? So for me, I have some friends who reach out to me, and I have some friends who don't, and I've accepted that I'm the one who's going to reach out to them, and that's okay. So I'm okay with that. But if you're not okay with that, then that's a choice that you make, and that's fine too. My son stutters, so I understand. It's rough, but don't give up. There's more people that will give grace than bully you. Exactly. There's a lot of letting go, I think, in ADHD. Yes. Samantha, I feel so connected with everyone here. That's so nice. Diagnosed with ADD a few years ago, and my 4-year-old is diagnosed with ADHD, and I know how she feels, and I try to be very understanding with her actions, but also with my issues. It's been a struggle. Yes, so a lot of parents have kids who are similar to them and might have similar issues, and it's very painful to see your kids struggle the way that you did. And they may or may not be interested in the tools or tips you have for them, particularly if they're over the age of 11. And so I think that, just your compassion and your ability to show up and validate her is so healing and so important. I feel like my son will never have a girlfriend because he feels awkward. You never know. Give him time. There's plenty of life out there. So just, he'll get there. He's just not there yet. Will you elaborate on charismatic adults and how that would look for teachers? Yes. So charismatic adult is not, George Clooney or, some other famous movie star that you like. Charismatic adult is someone who believes in you, someone who validates you, someone who for whom for someone who is a mentor for you, that accepts you and you feel like they believe in you. That is a charismatic adult. And for teachers, of course, you want to be that for your students. You want to believe in them and you want to guide them towards learning. So I think that sometimes adults can forget about that because they're frustrated with kids, particularly kids who are neurodiverse, and they forget that actually kids are really most looking for a sense of acceptance for who they are. Elena, that's very funny, Elena. Okay, yeah, Dana, I'm always the one to reach out. Right. And so some of us are reacher outers. Like I'm a natural extrovert and a lot of people aren't. And so I can accept that about myself or I can resent other people for not measuring up or showing up. So I'm leaning toward the acceptance. Sometimes I have a bad day and I don't feel that way, but generally I'm leaning I try to live with the acceptance. Jennifer, I struggle with communication no matter how hard I try or how many techniques I try. It seems like people most often still do not follow what I mean. So sometimes it's very hard to feel understood and heard. Um, uh, you may sometimes people speak around a topic, kind of like a spiral, like they start in one place and they go around until they get to the center. And some people just go into the center. And so it's challenging if you're someone who meanders a little bit to be in conversations with people who are much more direct and straightforward. And so I think if people aren't following you, and I would practice this one-on-one, Jennifer, I'd ask, where did you get lost? Where did I lose you? Well, how could I have said it in a way that you would have been able to follow better? So this is what you need, like a close friend or a cousin or a family member to help you with, or a therapist or a coach also would be useful. Carolina, I'm right there with you on this, but then I remember that I like not the popular guys. There are a lot of girls like that, especially when they get in their 20s. Yeah. Jennifer, I also feel like I never fit in anywhere. Well, you fit in here, and we're really glad to have you. Gotcha, Gail. Erica, hello. Any suggestions for how to approach a challenging learning situation without letting anxiety of past failures affect it? Trying to find a healthy balance. Not to mention, I'm seeing my daughter, who is almost 3, starting to exhibit behaviors like myself. So, challenging learning situation. So, when kids or when adults struggle in learning situations, it's natural to feel like your past failures are going to be repeated in this situation. So, what we want to do instead of avoidance procrastination, which is I'm not going to do this because it's just going to be the same thing as it was before. What we want to try to do is to think of our past successes. When was a time when I was struggling? It was really hard, but I actually tried something and it worked. And maybe it was a very small thing. I worked with a high school student, and she failed first freshman biology in high school, and she had to repeat it, and she had the same teacher in 10th grade. And so the fall, she started school, she studied for the first test, and she failed it. And she came into therapy and she said, I'm not even going to try anymore. Why bother? And I said, well, it's a little different this year. And she said, how? And I said, you have me, and I can call the teacher and I can talk to the teacher. So what I would like to do is to make an agreement with you. And the agreement is, if you go to after school to talk to the teacher, I will call the teacher as soon as we're done here and talk to him before you go after school and let him know how you want to do it differently, but you don't know how. And she did. And we came back. We went out for some hot chocolate because that was part of the agreement. And she actually passed that class with a C the second time. And part of it was actually being open to the possibility that something different could happen. Hi, Susan. Nice to see you. Lori. Okay. Lori's talking about that resting kind of rude face. Well, some of you say bitch face, but I hear you. Samantha, when she gets upset, she tells me that I don't love her and that she isn't beautiful, and that breaks my heart because I ask her all day long. I tell her all day long I love her, and I tell my girls I love them. So that's part of the dance that kids do. It hurts your heart, yes, and all you can do is say, I understand that's how you feel right now, and I love you, and I think you're beautiful. You can talk to them. Is there some part of yourself that you think is beautiful? But you can't do it in that moment when they're feeling bad. What they need in that moment is a hug and say, I see that you're feeling bad. I know that it gets tough. I'm here for you. Hi, Althea. Althea. Gail, I hear you. I hear you, but you know what? You can hate it, or you can just, hopefully maybe in your reaching out, you'll find someone who will reach back. Sometimes people have assumptions like you're busy, or you're occupied, or you're not around. They don't think you have time for them. So that's something that I've run into for sure. How does someone with ADHD work on social skills? That's a really good question, Monica. And there are a couple things that I wanted to share. So the first thing is you start with small goals. Instead of pressuring yourself to hang out with a large group of people on multiple occasions, set up some one-to-one get-togethers with friends or extended family. And these will help you practice your social skills in less overwhelming and pressure-filled situations where you can talk and listen without the distractions of having a lot of other people around and feeling like you're going to be judged and have to measure up. The second thing would be creating a strategy when you're in those larger gatherings. Talk through a coping strategy with a parent or a sibling, a counselor, or a coach. Think about who is going to this larger situation who feels safe for you to talk to, who understands that you struggle with social anxiety, and who you want to make sure you avoid and do not have contact with. What are you going to say to people who are more acquaintances, and what are you going to say to people, the couple people who are your friends? You need to have there's preparation and planning for learning social skills. Come up with a one line. Nice to see you. School or work or whatever is going fine. How are you? That you can say when people are asking you how you're doing. So you let them know that you're interested in them as well. I talked about planning your escape plan, plan your escape method. Decide in advance what you will do if you feel overwhelmed or uncomfortable, where you will go. The bathroom is always a safe bet. Or you can step outside when you're overloaded. You also want to remember how how to have certain conversational tools. And conversational tools, a very simple one is you reflect back what you hear someone saying with a little interpretation. Oh, so what I heard you say is you're not sure how people with ADHD work on social skills. That sounds interesting, or did I get that right? So that's actually a very common thing to do, and it helps let someone know that you're interested in them, you've heard what they have to say, and then they speak back, and then you can say something related or different. And the final thing is, I want you to plan for recovery time. People with social anxiety need time to recover from the output of energy, thought, and emotion that social interactions demand of them. Make a list of things you like to do that will help you chill out and nurture and nourish yourself after a social interaction or a party or a work gathering or a presentation. And put it on your phone or post it on your room or your refrigerator. Help your kids do the same, okay? And then use it. How do I let my few friends, mostly from church, that I need more support and to check in with me without me having to contact them first? I think what you want to say is, hey, you know what? I really miss you, or I wish we had more contact. I notice I'm reaching out a lot, and I'm wondering, if something's going on. Is that something you might be willing to do a little bit more? And really just keep it as light as possible and not accusatory. Lynn, one of my worst issues is that I take everything literally. So sometimes I don't understand if someone is joking or being serious, and I am too trusting, come off as being naive. I'm too frank and honest, which sometimes people take as rudeness. So if you are very literal and you can't tell if someone's joking, if you're on one-on-one, you could say, I'm not sure if that's a joke or you're serious. And if you're in a group, you could pause and see how other people respond to give you some information about how you can respond. And Carolina says she does the same thing. Specific details for praise. Yes. I sentences. I have to work on listening and not interrupting. That's a tough one. Augustine, when I look back to how awful I felt socially in high school, I always felt a few years behind. Even when I was voted the prom king, whoa, and it only made me feel more awkward. That's so funny, because people would think, oh my God, you're prom king, you must be so popular. So it seems like social successes don't necessarily lead to a change in feeling. Can I shed some light on this? Because I think, Augustine, a lot of people with ADHD feel inside like they're a fraud. So even if you're voted prom king, the internal conversation might be, well, I'm really actually, X, Y, and Z that's negative. And so we don't take in our successes, and also because the positive comments, the celebrations usually are fewer than the negative things. So there's this imbalance. So we have to actually really pay attention to the positive things and learn how to internalize them. Chris, at 47, I acquired a stutter, and my brain would periodically freeze up, causing more social anxiety and more studying, causing me to avoid going out too much. I'm sorry to hear that, Chris. Are you working with a speech language person about this? And have you talked to your primary care doctor perhaps about, is there any medication options? Everything I've read is to praise the efforts, not the results, so people don't feel like imposters or like they will fail in the future. That's exactly right. You want to notice the effort. I mean, if there's a result and you want to say high five, way to go, that's great. But you want to pay attention to the efforting, because that's what encourages people to keep going. Yes, and recharge after for self-care. Yep. Paula, introduce yourself and tell one interesting thing about yourself. Icebreakers like this make me want to run out of I freeze up and can't think of one thing. Okay, so that is really good to know about yourself. So what I would encourage you to do is to come up with the answer now. So anytime you're in that situation, you can say the same thing over and over again. There's no reason that you can't, or come up with two interesting things about yourself. and just rotate them. There's no reason it has to be new and novel every time. And the icebreakers are never the same, so practice response doesn't help. Okay, Paula. So my point is, yes, but for that particular one, introduce yourself and something interesting about yourself or something you like to do. Those are fairly common. And so, if you have a hobby, if you like to cook, if you like to run, you like to ride your bike, you like to read, keep those things at the top of mind so you can just use those. Kelly Lynn, how to read between the lines, how to know how to trust those deserving of trust. Okay. Wow. I think that those questions, Kelly Lynn, are so great, and we should do a whole Facebook Live about them. How to know how to trust those deserving of trust. So we'll make a note of that, and we will come back to it. I think that, reading between the lines, if it's something that doesn't come naturally to you, it's very hard to learn. And I think that's why SLP and social emotional learning is so important for so many people. Reading between the lines actually means being able to, I think, be able to ask a question if you don't understand the metaphor or the simile that is being used. And ask for, could you say that in a more concrete way? I think reading between the lines is about inferring what is not said, and that comes from understanding facial expressions and body language, but also knowing colloquialisms. And so that takes time to learn. How to sort of understand what those are in your culture, different expressions. But I will come back to that idea of how to know when to trust people. There's always something interesting about you, and interesting is not the is the wrong adjective. What is something about you that you want to share? That's really the question, because yes, maybe you jumped out of an airplane once, and parachuted. That is, somebody has that fact, but it doesn't matter, because if you say I like to garden, that's the thing that you share. There's no judgment on the interesting, and that's why I think people with ADHD get caught up. So this is that part of reading between the lines. Interesting, I have to make it interesting. I'm thinking exactly about interesting instead of broadening that to like some information about myself. And that's hard to do, particularly if you're not experienced with reading between the lines and saying interesting. I hate that, because it's so hard for people to say, well, I don't know, is this interesting? It's interesting to me. Who knows if it's interesting to you? So really think about it, like if you could just replace interesting with informative. Yes, you feel drained after a social interaction. I don't know who I am anymore. I just feel like a fraud. How do you get the word out so that others can find our ADD tribe and not struggle alone? Well, Attitude Magazine, I think, does a great job of trying to get the word out. I do that on my website as well. I'm just going to put here this little downloadable on anxiety for you, so please check it out. It's on just kind of managing anxiety in general. Let's see what else we get out. I did, and she excluded the general speech pathologies. Well, that's terrible. Maybe you can find someone else. How do you get past the small talk without verbally dumping on acquaintances? So, Samantha, I'm not sure what you mean by that. I think that's also a very interesting question that we could talk about in another time, which is like more than small talk. How do you have meaningful conversations where you're not feeling anxious and people don't feel ignored? So I think that there's a difference between small talk and sharing stories and dumping, so to speak. So I think when you're sharing stories, there's a give and take. There's a reciprocity. So that means you're listening and you're talking. And so that's where that really simple reflective listening comes in. Oh, I heard what you say is. That's really interesting. Um, Ask a question. And then, say, I have something that's related. And then say your thing. And hopefully they'll ask you a question. Lynn, I tend to be a nodder, masking the fact that I don't have a clue what is going on in the situation. Um, uh, Especially in a group, I feel like I miss out that way. Well, I can understand that. You can nod, and then when I think it's important when you don't know what's going on, you ask a question. Monica, I have a hard time paying attention to social cues. How do I focus on them? Um, so I'm going to take a couple more questions. One of the things that happens for people with ADHD, particularly if you also have autism, is that you're overwhelmed by the sensory information when you're with people, and there's so many places to look, so many things to hear. So you might want to like look at their hairline or maybe look at their glasses. You try to narrow your field, so that you're looking at less. And if you may miss social cues, so maybe give yourself permission. I'm going to watch a facial social cue for this comment, and then I'm going to take a break, then I'll come back. If you can't track it all the time and it overwhelms you, then don't. How do you find groups of adults with ADHD to meet? That's an excellent question. I would assume in your area that there's a CHADD organization, CHADD, or ADA. I think it would be really important to get involved with those two organizations because they have all kinds of stuff online and actually have groups that are local. Susie, thank you. So eye-opening as a parent of a teen with ADHD. Can't wait and love the trust piece. Oh, excellent and love the trust piece. Can't wait. My teen son is very sweet and caring. Teen girls mostly seem to latch on to him with their issues, and once they're over it, they tend to drop him as a friend. Ugh. It's very tough on him, but he's doing okay. Okay, can't wait for the trust. So this is the thing, like teen girls are like, oh, you're gonna listen to me, you're gonna pay attention to me, and then like I've solved my problem, so now I don't need you anymore. And so one of the things that we have to help him with is to adjust his expectations of what friendship with these people really is. So we'll do that soon. Um, Kelly, someone gave me advice to say right, not to say right, right, but I don't understand why. Because if you're saying right, right, the message that's communicating is, oh, yeah, yeah, but it doesn't sound genuine because if you keep saying it, it's like, what are you talking about? So instead, what I would say is you can do that sometimes, but you also might say, that's really interesting. I have a question. Or because if you say right, right, it sounds like, I'm not really listening to you. I'm doing something else. What you're saying isn't that important. Um, Thank you, Peter. And here's a virtual group of adults run by Attitude. Fantastic. Please do something for law enforcement training about different presentations and body language that betrays our intentions. Thank you. Well, Kelly, I think what would be great is if you contacted me directly or contacted Attitude, if you know how to set up such a thing, and then we would be happy to do that. So once again, I'm going to put my downloadable in the chat here for anyone to get. And I want to say thank you. Thank you for your honest sharing. Thank you for your participation. I love this community, and I look forward to seeing all of you next Friday. Have a good weekend.